Chris, when we look at this defensive line opening that is still available at Michigan, what's the latest there? And do we think that's something that will be filled during spring ball?
I do, and I think it'll happen probably pretty soon. Hopefully the vetting process goes a little faster and you hate to say a little more thorough, but man, that was a black eye. What happened with Greg Scruggs, it was disappointing. I feel bad for him and everybody involved and hope that he's okay, frankly. So, but you can't make decisions like that. So expect the resignation. When we heard about the details, guys, which came out later in the police report, the three of us talked about it and we all pretty much agreed that that wasn't going to last. So, but yeah, it stinks, but it is great to have guys like Mason Graham who told us last week and then reiterated today that he was coming back and going to be part of this, even though I'm telling you guys, the money that was thrown at him, it takes a special guy. And Kenneth Grant the same way. Love these guys and the kids that they are and that they want to stay here and contribute and build on the culture that they've helped establish here, a national championship culture, guys. I never thought that I would ever see it again at Michigan, frankly. I said that. I think somebody put out a graphic today, 2 5-stars on the roster when every other national champion had, like in the last 10 years or something, had 5 or 6. Is that right? Something like that. So
I mean, it's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, that's talent identification, that's talent development, and that's finding guys like this who are absolute monsters. So, and another great kid to boot. So I'm looking forward to a good year. From what we've heard, guys, they are very bullish on this team. They are excited about what they've seen from the offensive line in the very early going, feeling really good, as Sharon Moore said about the cornerbacks, which was another question. So, you know what? I got the football bug. I'm not wishing my summers away anymore. I'm no spring chicken anymore, but I can't wait till football season, fellas.
Yeah, and as Sharon said on Thursday with the O-line, he reserves judgment until they have pads on. They probably had 1 or 2 padded practices, so we'll see how it goes. I think the O-line could be pretty good this year. I mean, at some point, like it's kind of weird because you think about it and you're like, oh shoot, they lost their top 6 offensive linemen, but you more have to think about it in the sense that it's amazing Zach Zinter and Trevor Keegan, all those guys stayed as long as they did. I mean, over 40 starts for a couple of those guys at Michigan. You had a couple guys from the transfer portal that were big additions. You have the same thing this year with at least one. We'll see what they do in the spring, but that's going to be one, you're going to ride that defense. And Mason Graham said that even last year, but even more so this year, they feel like they want to carry the team. They want the team to be dependent on the defense. They want to be the side of the ball that has to make that crucial play or that big stop. And of course, we saw that on a number of occasions last year. So, but you're going to ride the defense. You're going to have a new quarterback, whoever that is. That O-line needs to be really good and solid to help out the rest of the operation, at least early on in the season. Big game against Texas early. You got to have at least a few of those. Defense is going to be good. You got to be solid on offense, control the line of scrimmage in a big game when you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of your quarterback. But I'm excited too. I'm excited for the spring game, first and foremost, less than a month away. Aaron Fox as well. That was announced today, which will be kind of cool to give everybody a look at the national champs.
Can't hurt, right? When you look at the defensive side of the ball and that offensive line too, it kind of reminds me of, back in the day, before there was a salary cap in the NHL. I think back to like those Red Wings teams of the early 2000s where, you had Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg who would go on to be Hall of Famers, basically getting extra reps overseas or in Grand Rapids and not really ready to come up until some of those Hall of Famers, some of those foundational guys moved on. And with that offensive line, I mean, I think Giovanni El Hadi could have started if there was an injury. He did start 2 years ago, could have easily started last year. A lot of those guys, I think Greg Crippen, even as early as last year, may have been a starter but you bring in Olu Olatimi, you bring in Drake Nugent, and that was a strength of those guys. And, I want to kind of steer towards, we talked to Donovan Edwards today, and Clayton, you had written about this, from his press conference where he talks about getting the fire back in him after a year that was, I guess you could say, I mean, certainly from a production standpoint, a step back for him, but, he had the knee procedure in the offseason. Blake Corum had come back and was going to be that lead back. He didn't play in spring ball, and he just felt like a combination of factors for as confidently For as much confidence as maybe he projected last offseason, it didn't show up on the field a ton. And he found his groove late in the year, then obviously in the biggest game of his life against Washington. But we get to talk to him today, and he comes out. He's 14 pounds heavier. He's a little more rocked up, as I think Kurt Campbell said a couple of weeks ago. He's a guy that you get the sense that, finally being healthy, heading into a full off season, heading into spring ball, he's getting his body right, not necessarily to be more of a short yardage back, but to be a guy that can take some more of the hits and run through contact a little better. And I think Donovan's a guy that I think the year of perspective he got, to me, it almost kind of rings like Rocky 3, where Rocky got a little too high on his own product, got knocked back down again, or knocked back down a peg. And, you find that eye of the tiger, so to speak, or in his case, the eye of the Wolverine. And now you're back to building towards something. But a guy that you think is probably going to be the lead back for this team, at the very least, be a 1A, 1B type of thing. And I thought the perspective we heard from him in Monday's press conference, Clayton, it was a little bit different, but also vintage Donovan at the same time.
Yeah, it was as impressive of a press conference and as honest as someone has been that I've had, or heard in a while. And it was kind of the same Donovan Edwards, but also just a completely more mature and, introspective Donovan Edwards as well. And I asked him about that knee surgery that he had last year, which is something I wondered about throughout the year. Like, how much are we overlooking maybe how that held him back? He didn't get to participate in spring ball last year. Maybe didn't seem to have quite the leg strength that he would have liked to have. Didn't run through contact well enough. And, he said it set him back tremendously. He added the 14 pounds, as he talked about, up to 214. He said he wants to be at least over 210 in terms of, to help him with durability, not necessarily to carry the load as a short yardage back. I think that comment was more about, not having an issue there with being a short yardage back. I think he's confident in his ability to do that, and we'll see kind of how it's split up between him and Khalil Mullings. But I thought it was good insight from him. He talked about the rest of the running back room. He's now stepped up as a leader. He said it would be a disservice if I just worked hard and did everything for myself. But I want to bring guys along with me, and they need that on this team. You're losing a bunch of good leaders on this team, but when we asked Makari Page today about who stepped up as a leader, he had a bunch of names to rattle off. So they got guys that were behind those other guys that watched and learned, were leaders in their own way last year, and now are going to step up. And I think Donovan's, kind of a prime example of that.
Who were some of those guys?
KG, Mason, he mentioned Donovan. And Makari Page is quiet, but, he probably is himself. He said Rod Moore has stepped up big time as a leader, and we know he was already one, but it's a little bit different when you're a senior, I think. And then Donovan said there's like two leaders in every position room as well. And he talked about Colston Loveland in the tight ends room and more than two in the offensive line room. So I think that's going to be really big for this team, the standard that they set. And Makari Page said a lot of the leadership that they're doing is now they have this standard, which is national champions. They're standing there in front of a background that has the logo of 2023 national champs. That's what they're holding the young guys to.
They should.
That's a good place to start from.
Success breeds success, fellas. And it's just like Doug Skeen, my podcast partner, always says. He said, we knew, man, we did not want to let those guys down after the fact, and he said classes before us and the classes before them and the guys that won championships. And of course they lost that during the Rich Rod era. That was one of the things when it was a high risk, high reward hire with Rich Rod, you risk alienating that and losing your culture. And they did. And it was tough to overcome. They needed a guy like Jim Harbaugh to do it. Now the hope is that Sharon Moore has that culture ingrained in him as well. He does not have the experience. People can sit there and say, well, yeah, he was the obvious hire, and we did too, and we were all for giving him the shot, but this is not going to be easy. So, but I love the fact that he was part of building that culture. I love who he is, and I love his recruiting chops. He's going to work his butt off to make this program great, and the leadership that you saw and that you've seen, Donovan Edwards will be a captain on this team, I guarantee it, is one of the byproducts of that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, you're right. The success breeds the success. And when you look at these teams that have been successful and won national championships, in the college football playoff era, they've all been programs that before that there's been a standard set, and there have been guys that there's been leadership that you kind of take the baton from. And, I think it was Donovan who said, I learned how to lead from guys like Aiden Hutchinson and Josh Ross. And then they learned how to lead, or the guys after, your Mozzie Smiths of the world, your Mike Morris, some of those other guys, you keep passing the baton to that next group. And it's why this program does have a chance to be sustainably successful under Sharon Moore, is because the nucleus of this team are all guys that have been here certainly last year, a lot of them the year before that, some of them in 2021. So, again, you have success based on your players, you have success based on your player leadership. And right now, I mean, again, it's going to take they have some special guys, to fill big shoes to fill from that perspective. But you look at the guys that you just kind of keep backfilling. I think they're in really good hands there. And that doesn't mean they're without questions. Doesn't mean they're going to have a perfect season. Most teams don't have a perfect season. But, when you look at the foundation of what's there, you just continue to hear all the right things. And maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to have a different voice and a bit of a different perspective coming off the year that they just had, because now it's a different group of coaches that are chasing perfection. It's a different group of starters that are chasing that perfection. So to me, certainly so far, again, for as encouraged as you can be by spring football, pretty good start, it seems like, on all accounts.